It is an absolute joy to be with you. Thank you so much for being here today. And some of you will have been doing this for many years, and some of you just begun. And all kinds of men and women here today. Some of you going through great times in your life, and then it's easy to help others. And some of you reaching out to others during the very darkest times of your own family life. Some of you feel you could reach out and touch Jesus now, and for others, faith is struggling in your heart. All kinds of people. But we're glad you're here. And God is glad you're here. We have come together because it is right. We are stronger together. Some years ago, I wrote a book called The Heart of Success, Making it in Business Without Losing in Life. And I got invited all over the world to talk to blue chip companies about that book. A couple of years ago, the president of Swaziland invited me in to speak to him and the whole of his cabinet for a couple of hours on that book. And Helen said to me a couple of months ago, Rob, you know the kind of principles you share in that book about leadership and teams, and those are relevant to toddler groups. And I'd like you to share some of that stuff with our group today. So I want to share some of that stuff with you. And the first principle is this. And well, I have to tell you about my dad, first of all. Dad was a postman. We didn't have a wealthy home. We didn't have an inside toilet. We didn't have running hot water. We didn't have a bathroom. We didn't have toilet paper. Don't even ask. Except even now I can't look at a copy of the Southwest Echo without a million memories coming flooding back. And somehow I passed 11 plus, although we only had a couple of books in our home. My mum could read and write, but not much more than that. School was a bit of a mystery to me. And on the first day of school, my father came to me because the teacher shouted out, I want you to yell out what your fathers do for a living. And I thought, wow, postman. The kid next to me yelled out, company director. His father was a bookie, but I suppose he was a company director. I remember mumbling postman as quietly as I possibly could. And when I got home, I said to my dad, Dad, do you ever get bored just sticking letters through doors? If I hurt him, he didn't show it. He said, son, your father delivers the Royal Mail. He made it sound as if the Queen herself had asked my old man, would he mind sticking some letters in as he walked around the streets? He said, armies depend on me, business depend on me, lovers depend on me. No, son, I don't get bored. You should see somebody waiting for a letter from me. And before he went to work, he'd put out a white shirt and a black tie and trousers you could cut your finger on the crease. And then my father would shine his shoes. My father's shoes shone. But one night I caught him cleaning the underneath of his shoes and said, Dad, don't do that, nobody will ever know. He said, I'll know. When I was about 14, he took me aside and he said, son, I don't much care what you do in life, and be assured, he didn't. But whatever you do, believe it makes a difference. Believe it makes a difference. You know, when my dad was delivering letters, sometimes I'd be cycling home from school if it was raining. He'd have his cape around the letters to keep them dry. My dad believed that delivering letters was something he could do well for people. Whatever you do, Rob, believe it makes a difference. Do it with all your heart. You know, sometimes in the hurly and burly of whatever ministry or job God has called us to, we forget. We're putting the toys up, we're getting the coffee on, we're putting the chairs up, we're doing all the stuff. We forget it makes a difference. I want to say to you today, with all my heart, the job you do makes a difference. I see in my mind's eye tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of little children and their families reaching out into big houses and small houses, and some of their hearts breaking, and who knows what's coming down the road towards those little ones. And you are sowing into their lives now. For some men and women, you are their lifeline. You are their hope. You are the one that says to them, even as you play with their child, this is not just you. We can get through this together. The job you do makes a difference. And if you are to lead, if you are to encourage your team, let them know that. Tell them time and time again, don't forget that. A friend of mine was asked to be a consultant for a very, very big pharmaceutical company. They were losing their people. They were losing them to competitors and middle management, secretaries. How can we stop this hemorrhages of our staff? They said to Jill. They said, we're prepared to give them better cars, offices overlooking the lake, better pension plans. Just a minute, what do you people do? Pharmaceuticals. What kind? Well, drugs. What kind of drugs? Children. What do your drugs do for children? Our drugs save children's lives. Okay, so before fancy cars, before offices overlooking the lake, before better pensions, I want you to make 6 feet high color photographs of kids' lives you've saved. Put them in the walkway, put them in security, put them in the boardroom, put them in the toilets. As people walk around this building, I want them to believe again that the job they do makes a difference. Perhaps you can put big photographs up of previous children in your groups. Perhaps you can have men and women who used to be in your groups years ago. Some of you have been doing this a long time. But let your people know the job they do makes a difference. I walked into a toilet in the fancy hotel in London not too long ago, and the guy looking after the toilet said to me, "Welcome to my boardroom." I like that. The job you do makes a difference. Let your people know that. And then secondly, help them discover their strengths, those individual strengths they have. You know, I like karaoke. I was at a party not long ago, and they pulled out this karaoke machine, and I kind of pretend I don't want to do it, but I'm dying to have a go. The karaoke is kind of nice, isn't it? Because as you're doing it, you can imagine, as you're belting out Suspicious Minds, that you are actually the king himself. And you know the funny thing about karaoke? After a while, you get into it, and the audience clap, and they like it, and karaoke's fine. Unless one day, you wake up, and you want to sing your own song. You are tired of trying to be somebody else. You are tired of trying to sing somebody else's words. You want to be you, but the world won't let you be you. They want you to be somebody else, and pretty soon, although you try and sing, they're tired, and they want you to climb into the old costume and stick the old tracking tapes on again. People do that to us in life. They will not let us be us. But great leaders allow people to do that. They find their individual strengths, their talents, they encourage them. I'm sure that you tell your little ones that story of David and Goliath, don't you? There is a remarkable moment in that story. When David comes to the king and he says, "I'm ready to have a go at the giant." And the king says, "Well, you can on one condition. You have to wear my armor." And David doesn't want to offend the king, so he climbs into this armor. And almost as soon as he does it, he knows he's made a dreadful mistake. He can hardly move in this stuff. We don't know exactly what went on in the following minutes, but it must have been something like this. He must have said, "Oh, king, I don't want to offend you. You're the king of Israel, for goodness sake. But I can't wear your armor because I'm not you. If you will set me free with this sling, you'll see things you can only dream of." Ladies and gentlemen, I'm telling you, the whole world wants to put you in their armor. They want you to wear Saul's armor. They want you to be like them. But great leaders don't do that to people. Great leaders look for gift. They look for strategy. They look for things that people can do, little things. I spoke a couple of years ago to Rosemary Connolly's annual conference. I'm telling you, I've rarely spoke to a scarier bunch. 250 women in rippling lycra. And in the interval, someone was talking about who are the most important people in the slimming class. Who do you think the most important people in the slimming class is? And they said to me, it's not the presenter. It's normally the woman who collects the money at the desk, her welcome when someone whispers, "I think I've put a few pounds on. Don't worry." Incidentally, Diane went to a slimming club a couple of years ago, and they sent her a card. She said it took her like a month to lose a pound. And they sent her a card. "Just a pound, I hear you say. I've lost so little weight today. But here encouragement is found. You'll gain that victory pound by pound." They must have got down on a bad day, because she sent them a card back. "Thank you for your little card, although I found it rather hard. That glorious pound I lost that day, I put back on by Saturday. And they told me in these classes the most important person is that woman who greets. You've got to have somebody who's a great listener with a big smile. You've got to have somebody who makes people feel like they can recover again. And makes them feel wanted, as if they weren't there, they'd miss them. They might not be the greatest in teaching kids stories or doing this or doing that, but they have a strength. You know, Wayne Gretzky is perhaps the greatest ice hockey player the world has ever seen. One day somebody said to Gretzky, "Hey Gretzky, how come you're so good?" This is what Gretzky said: "I skate where the puck is going to be." Isn't that amazing? I skate where the puck is going to be. An innate strength. Great listeners look in people's eyes when they're talking to them. Not the television behind or the person over there. In their eyes. Great listeners know when just a little touch, an encouragement, a me too, a smile. It could be whatever your strength is. Great leaders find those strengths. You know, as long as we can only use the successful people, we're all done for. But when we release the broken, those who've struggled a bit, and find what they can bring to the party, we release an army of millions of volunteers. And then thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, great leaders catch people doing something right. If you want to be a great leader, a great team player, catch your people, those who work with you, doing something right. The most successful book on management ever written is a slim volume you can read in about 20 minutes. It's called The 1 Minute Manager. He says take 60 seconds a day to tell people when they're doing well. I was on tour years ago with a guy called Josh McDowell. And he said, "Rob, you have to catch your kids doing something right. That is particularly important with a testing child." Anybody here with a testing child? Wow, just a couple of hundred of you. We had 2 kids. Katie was compliant. For a while, we thought we were great parents. Then Lloyd came along. He was our testing one. They're grown now with kids of their own. Boy, that kid was testing. Do you know, when he was 4, he urinated in a milk bottle in the kitchen. That wouldn't have been a big problem if there hadn't been milk in the milk bottle. And even that wouldn't have been a big deal if Diana hadn't had friends around that afternoon for coffee. And ladies and gentlemen, even that wouldn't have been a big problem if Lloyd had told his mother what he'd done before they had coffee. Diane says she has 2 images seared into her mind from that day. One is of her friend Sheila saying, "Diane, I think this milk may be slightly off." But the second is of this little boy. He's 4 years old. He's in the corner. He's holding his side. And he is shaking with laughter. Do you know why that little boy was laughing? He wasn't laughing at just weed in a milk bottle. He's laughing because he's saying to himself, "You think this is a big deal? I'm only just getting going. I'm 4, for goodness sake. You want to see me when I'm 14? When he was 14, he was still driving me crazy. I did a deal with God. I know you're not meant to do that. I said, if I can see him with a child that wags her finger and shakes her head and says, "No, you can take me then." And I watch him now with Elevie. She wags that little finger at him, and she stamps that little foot, and she shakes it and says, "No." And I think any day now, swing low, sweet chariot. And as I'm going up, I'll be yelling down, "Read my books." Sweet revenge. My children have something for their kids called the thinking step. It used to be the naughty step, but that's not politically correct now. It's the thinking step. Apparently, you get a minute on the thinking step if you're naughty for every year of your life. To be honest, I can't see what the big deal is. 60 plus years for me on the thinking step would be like a spiritual retreat. Evie lives her life on the thinking step. Evie has her meals on the thinking step. At night, they tuck Evie into bed on the thinking step. Lloyd, you got to catch Evie doing something right. If the ear never hears praise, the heart loses the will to try. I don't care if she does it by accident. Well done, my darling. Good job. You're a good friend. Good that you catch them doing something right. The sheer power of praise. And you have to do that with your people. Don't be too picky. You know, people, they say in the business world, people don't leave jobs, they leave supervisors. Don't be too picky. You have to let people know when they've got it wrong. I had to do that this week with somebody. You sit down and it's hard, but don't be picky. Be swift to forgive if you can. Allow people to believe that you're looking for them doing well. Well done, good job. And allow people the possibility even of a little failure. You know, sometimes we don't try because we might fail. Do you ever feel like that? You want to try something, but you're scared of failing? Perhaps a mother, a father, a teacher's always been on your back. But you've got to have people that let you have a crack at things. My favorite poem used to be Christina Rossetti's poem, Uphill. But about 6 months ago, my daughter gave me a new poem. It's the shortest poem I've ever come across. It is my favorite poem and will be till the day I die. You can put this on my tomb if you want. There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky. And you say, but what if I fall? Oh, my darling. What if you fly? There is freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky. And you say, but what if I fall? Oh, my darling. What if you fly? You might have had a teacher, a friend, even a husband or wife, always picking at you, always trying to make you feel you could never do anything, but you can. The God of the universe is by your side. The power of His Spirit is within you. What if you fly? And if you fail? You will at least fail daring greatly. As Roosevelt said, your place will never be with those poor and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat. And you may fly. Principles of leadership. Believe the job you do makes a difference. Catch people doing something right. The power of vision. There is a remarkable passage, though, in the Bible which has things much deeper than that. Let me read you the greatest leader who ever lived and an account of what happened. It was just before Passover. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. Here at last was a man on planet Earth with nothing to prove. He knew where he'd come from, he knew where he was going, and that allowed him to do the most remarkable three things. Number one, he took a towel and he began to wash their feet. This is the humility of a leader. And second, he said to them, a new commandment I'm giving you. You must love one another. This is a leader understanding that nothing comes close to relationships. Not building ministries or programs or churches. Nothing comes close to relationships. You must love each other. In your teams, in your churches, with each other. You'll get it wrong, forgive each other, but you must love each other. And then last of all, when the team's heads were reeling, he had just told them three things that rocked their world. I'm going to leave you now. One of you will deny me. One of you will betray me. He said, in my Father's house are many rooms. Great leaders lift people's eyes. They give them perspective to a bigger world. He washed their feet. Can you and I be like that as leaders? Can we be truly humble? Are we prepared, if necessary, to do the menial stuff? The ordinary stuff, to wash those feet? Are we prepared to be humble enough to catch somebody doing something right and praise them for it? Do you know, I've told some of you before, Dan and I had only been married for a couple of years, and there was a knock on our door one winter's night. There's a man standing there. I recognize him. He used to come to our Sunday school when we were kids. educationally challenged, in a care home. The Sunday school superintendent would go and get Ronnie and bring him to our Sunday school class, and we'd torment him for an hour, and he'd go back to the care home. And when he was 16, he left the care home, and now he's in his late 20s. He's practically living rough on the streets of Cardiff. And I open the door, and he's got a black plastic bag with all his worldly possessions in his left hand, a frozen chicken. And I says, Ronnie, isn't it? Yes, Rob, he said. I found you. I said, where'd you get your chicken? Somebody gave it to me for Christmas. And he came in, and Dan cooked his chicken, and she said, stay tonight with us, and stay the next night. And then it was Christmas Eve, and he didn't go. And Ronnie never left. He's been with us almost 40 years. The kids have come and gone, but Ronnie's still with us. And when he'd been with us a short time, he got a job as a dustman. And I was in the law practice, and I used to drop him off at the dust yard, and on the way to the law practice, I get home at night, he'd be sat in a chair giggling. And I say, Ronnie, when I get home, you're always giggling. What amuses you so much? Rob, when you take me to work in the mornings, the other men say to me, hey, who brings you to work in the car? And I say, oh, it's my solicitor. No, it wasn't that. Do you know what I think it was? He never had a mum take him first day of school. Never had a mum brush away her tears. He went into the playground. Ronnie never did have a dad when he was 11 say, how'd it go in the big school today, son? But now he's a man and somebody is at the gate. But his self-esteem was very low. I remember saying to him, Ronnie, what school did you go to? He said, oh, I went to the backward school. Ronnie's self-esteem was through the floor. But he kept the job as a dustman for 29 years. And then he used to carry the money round for the collection in church. And then he began working with homeless people himself a bit. And then he got a job in a nursing home, and he's 70-odd now, and he works as a volunteer for Care for the Family now. He comes in, he loves doing that. And there's a guy here, Martin, and Martin is like Mother Teresa to Ronnie. He's encouraging him, he's blessing him, and Ronnie has packed 6,000 envelopes in the past year. He has packed 4,000 delegate bags. He has packed 1,000 appeal letters. And in our staff conference, we had about 100 of our people got together. Martin came out the front and he said, we want to honor someone today. And they got Ronnie out and they gave him a big certificate, as big as a house practically, with all that he had done. Take a look at him having it. You only have to come within 100 meters of our house. You get dragged in to look at that certificate. The postman has seen it. Somebody caught Ronnie doing something right. Every morning he's there in the kitchen. He says to me, what do they think of me in Care for the Family? I say, Ronnie, you're the best packer we have ever had in 30 years. And Martin, as a leader, had the humility to reach out to him and see that he could do something. Great leaders have that humility. And great leaders understand the power of relationships. When we take people on in Care for the Family, we look at the 3 C's. Competence, can they do the job? Chemistry, can they mix with people? Are they good in a team? Those matter. But the last one is vital, character. We don't need some prima donna that won't forgive, that can't work with others, that won't do the menial stuff if necessary. You have to love each other, the power of relationship. And then thirdly, as I close, great leaders give people perspective. They lift their eyes when things get rough. Say, don't lose heart, don't lose heart. Guys, in my Father's house are many rooms, so I would have told you. Lift their eyes to another world. And that gives me the chance to tell you my favorite story. It's a little boy whose parents owned one of the very first telephones. It was a wooden thing. He said we lived on the plains in America, and my mother would wind it up, and she would say, information, please, and a voice would say, this is information. And information, please, would get at the time or the weather or a number. And he said, one day I'm 9 years old, and I bang my thumb with a hammer, and my parents are out, so there's no point crying. And then I remember the telephone. And I get a little stool and I wind the telephone up and I say, information, please. And a voice says, this is information. And I say, I bang my thumb. And information, please, said, is your mummy in? No. Is your daddy in? No. Is it bleeding? No. Could you get to the icebox? Yes. hold some ice against it. He said it worked. He said, after that, I rang Information Please for anything. Information Please taught me to spell disappear. Information Please taught me where Philadelphia was. And when my pet canary died, I cried and said, why would God make anything that can sing so beautifully and let it die? Information Please said, Paul, you must always remember there were other worlds to sing in. And then we moved to New York City, and I was out of her area. And anyway, I didn't believe Information Please could live in this new plastic phone, and I never rang her again till I was 24 years old. And I flew into my old town, and I'm in the airport lounge, and I look at the phone and think, I wonder. And I dial, and I say, Information Please, and a voice says, this is Information. And I say, could you teach me to spell disappear? And she said, I expect that thumb is better by now. And I said, have you any idea what you meant to me? She said, have you any idea what you meant to me? We couldn't have children of our own. I used to love it when you rang me. Now I'm very old. I'm not well, only coming a couple of hours a week. You remember my name's Sally? You ring me when you're in my area. And I promised I would, and we did, and we would talk. And one day I rang. And I said, Information Please. And a different voice said, this is Information. And I said, could I speak to Sally? And the lady said, oh, I'm sorry, Sir Sally. Sally died a couple of weeks ago. She was very old. And, oh, I'm sorry to trouble you. No, wait. Is your name Paul? Why? Yes, it is. Well, Paul. Sally said, if you happen to ring, we must be sure to give you this message. Paul, you must always remember there are other worlds to sing in. Therefore, we do not lose heart. Though inwardly, and some of you are going through tough times, I know, though inwardly we might be struggling, outwardly we are being renewed day by day, and our lightened moment troubles are achieving for us a glory that far outweighs them all. So, we fix our eyes, not on what is seen, but what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen will last forever. You're changing lives. The job you do is making a difference. Don't lose heart. God bless you.